because we're going to skip trace. We're going to skip here. We're going to pick up on David's move toward his move toward the cave. I want to, where he's being chased from the throne. And unfortunately, I didn't mark this. I got an idea of where it is. And the people turned. See, the people turned and went with, like I said, the majority is always wrong in the Bible. Always. Excuse me. And you see that time and time again in the scripture. I think we're going to pick up here chapter 15, because I want to skip a lot of stuff. Verse 13. And David spent 13 years prior, like I said, being chased by Saul until Saul was killed on the hill of Gilboa, I believe it was, and all 7 of his sons were killed with him. Saul ended up falling on the sword, taking his own life, pretty much. I think he had somebody else to stick him through, finish him off. But anyway, the end of Saul was over. God resented Saul, repented that he made Saul king. He didn't want the people to have a king in the first place. That was on them. God said, I'm your king. They wanted to be like all the other rulers in the earth, and other nations in the earth with rulers over them. So God gave him his free will. But he said, if the king screws up, you're going to be judged because of the king's sin. And that's what happened. All vice versa. So now here we are. David had been king for quite some time. I don't know, approximately 20 years maybe. Like I said, it took him almost 20 years to get the king, if not 20. And he was a fugitive on the run and living in that cave. Now, he got to enjoy the fruits of kingship until he screwed up. And then failed behind his woman. And now, he's about to be a fugitive again. Now this is an older David. This is a David that's gotten cushy here, being king. It's good to be king. Now it's a little bit rougher for you. Once you've enjoyed the good life, it'll be like you being a billionaire or multi-millionaire. Now you gotta go live in the projects. Got a rough adjustment for you. But that's what this cave of Adullum represents. Adjustment. And there came a messenger, in case you get 2 Samuel 15:13. And there came a messenger to David, saying, the hearts of the men of Israel are after Absalom. And David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem. At that time, when David said that, the majority is always wrong in the Bible. But in this case, like I said, Absalom had seduced the majority of the people. David just he had his faithful band of mighties that were still with him. Maybe a handful of others, but for the most part, The majority was with Absalom. In order, in the case here, if you want to parallel, the majority was with Donald J. Trump. It's a minority that flipped everything in their favor illegally with the Vegas style voting machine. And stole what was rightfully Donald J. Trump's president and made him up and been persecuting him ever since. I mean, they haven't given him a break since he came down the escalator. This man is living a parallel life of David himself as a fugitive behind the 8 ball right now ever since. And just, they've never let up. These satanic global goblins and their deep state cronies. The Club of Rome has still been after this man. Pursue him like a rabbit. Now, David is having the hearts of the people turn. In order to really get momentum, you have to keep the hearts of the people. Now, President Trump is still filling stadiums up and people, their lines are long. The hearts of the people, the majority, are still with President Trump and don't recognize his illegitimate regime that's in power right now and that was installed Marxist style. But that being said, this is a spiritual battle. This is a spiritual war. God is going to overturn all this. You've heard me. You've seen my 2 bottles of champagne that I bought in advance and saying God's going to give President Trump 2 terms just like he said through all the prophets. That you've had seen me over the years. Even before Donald Trump ran, was posting certain prophets that were saying he was going to win the presidency. We've been ahead. We've been with heavenly news for a very long time. I don't even have a TV in my house to watch fake news. And that's why. I just pretty much glean what I get from my people or happen to come across from some posts. But other than that, I wouldn't really know what they're talking about. Because I don't watch it. It's all propaganda and brainwash. And I've been stating that for years. Television program, L-I-E program. And I'm not with it. But that being said, I mean, it's part of the dumbing down of America. And that's part of it. That being said, the people, the majority, makes a big difference. This is a battle for the minds and souls of men in this time that we're living in. And you've got to have the majority on your side. David had the majority on his side. He wouldn't have to flee. But in order to make a smooth transition back to power, the majority has to remain. And referring down to Donald J. Trump. He has to keep the majority of the people. When the majority of people have to wake up, or else you're going to have civil war, and that's what you don't know. We've had that in history before, and there's no really, that's a period victories, no winners really, in the Civil War. Now, David knew that. And David didn't want to split the kingdom. So David took the low road of least resistance. Just like Donald Trump did. And David said unto all his servants that were with him at Jerusalem, arise and let us flee. They be ready to go on the run. Arise, let us flee. For we shall not escape from Absalom. Make speed to depart, lest he overtake us suddenly, and bring evil upon us and smite. And Absalom would kill his own father, dead. He was ruthless for power, and that's what you got now. You got people that will kill you and I and every person in this nation, like Hitlerian style, for power. That's what we got here. We got fascists, Marxists running this nation that would stop at nothing. They put targets on the Christians' backs right now, using their corrupt, bureaucratic enemies as enforcers. To go after the conservative Christian voices in this nation. This is a spiritual warfare. They're not going to win. They're all going down, and their regime is going down. But we still in this cave of Adullum in the nation right now. And here's David on the run back to that cave. He said, let us make speed before evil, and they smite the city with the edge of the sword. And the king's servants said unto the king, behold, the servants, or behold, thy servants are ready to do whatever my lord the king shall appoint. That's important to have loyalty. And David had that. Remember I taught on, put that up on the site, David's mighties. David had his mighties that was with him through thick and thin, that went, and they were guerrilla warriors with David, fighting and still taking care of business even when they was living in the cave the first time. They were still defending Israel's flanks against enemies. They were guerrilla warriors. And these guys were like special forces. These were real killers. That was headed by a real killer. God was very trained and skilled in arms and hand-to-hand combat of that day. I mean, David can pick you off with a rock and a sling. But these guys, it was all great spears and whatever other swords, bow and arrows, on horses flying with bow and arrows. These guys fought lions and pits and everything. These guys went hand-to-hand combat with lions. These were real killers. It was running one day. But they said they were loyal. Whatever my lord the king, they had heart. David had heart. And his men did too. My lord the king shall appoint. And the king went forth, all his household after him. And the king left 10 women, which were concubines, to keep the house. And the king went forth, and all the people after him, and tarried in a place that was afar off. And all the servants passed on beside him, and all the Cherethites, and all the Pelethites, and all the Gittites, the 100 men which came after him from Gath, passed on before the king. Then said the king to Ittai, the Gittite, Wherefore goest thou also with us? Return to the place, and abide with the king, for thou art a stranger, and also in exile, whereas thou camest but yesterday. Shall I this day make thee go up and down with us, saying, so whether I may return thou and take back the brethren, mercy and truth be with thee. Say, I'm not going to put you on the run and make you a fugitive with me. And Intel answered the king and said, as the Lord liveth, and as my Lord the king liveth, surety in what place my Lord the king shall be, whatsoever in death or life, even there also will be thy servant, or will thy servant be. And David said to Ittai, go and pass over. And Ittai the Gittite passed over, and all the men and all the little ones that were with him. This man had loyalty. That's what I told you. David had loyalty. That's very important in that case when we don't have some loyalty. And all the country wept aloud in a loud voice, and all the people passed over. And the king also himself passed over the brook Kidron, and all the people passed over toward the way of the wilderness. And Zadok said also, and all the Levites were with him, bearing up the ark of the covenant of God. And they set down the ark of God, and Abiathar, went up until all the people had done passing out of the way. And the king said unto Zadok, carry back the ark of God into the city. If I shall find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me again and show me both it and its habitation. But if he does say, I have no delight in thee, behold, here I am. Let him do to me what seemeth good unto him. And the king said unto Zadok the priest, Art not thou, Are not thou a seer? Return unto the city in peace, and your 2 sons with you, Abinez, their son, and Jonathan, the son of Abiathar. See, I will carry in the plain of the wilderness until there come word from you to certify me. Zadok therefore and Abiathar carried the ark of God again to Jerusalem. Now that ark symbolized God's presence. It's the ark of the presence, it was called. Where God's presence was with you in that ark. So say David sent the symbol of God's presence back to Jerusalem. And at this point, he felt I sinned. He didn't have the faith to say, if God restore me, well, I'll see the ark again. But right now, he wasn't even sure of his position with God because of his sin. But he knew to send the ark back to God's presence. And David went by the ascent of the Mount of Olives. That's where Jesus was, and wept. And he went up and had his head covered. And he went barefoot. And all the people that was with him covered, and every man his head. And they went up weeping as they went up. And one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. And it came to pass, that while David was come to the top of the mount, where he worshiped God, behold, Hashel, the Archite, came to meet him with his coat rent and earth upon his head, unto whom David said, If thou passest on with us, thou shalt be a burden unto me. But if thou return to the city, and say unto Absalom, I will be thy servant, O king, I have been thy father's servant hitherto, to will I now also be thy servant. Thou mayest thou for me defeat the counsel of Ahithophel. And hast thou not there with thee? So he's saying go back and be one of the king's counsel, one of the magi, to give the king advice, but you counter his advice and cause disruption with Ahithophel, who sold David out, and he was treasonous because he wanted power too. That's what they do when they want to get rid of God's choice, God's man in power, and go all for corruption so they can have the power to themselves in a rogue regime. They can get even more brownie points and shine even brighter in their eyes. And hast thou not there with thee Zadok and Abiathar the priest? Therefore it shall be. So David saying, we got our white hats that's in government, that's looking out, even though we're in a rogue regime, that's looking out for the interests. That's looking out for God's interests and God's king, God's people. And they're going to be disruptors. God always got his people in place, even in these rogue regimes. It's the point of making here. Abiathar and the priest. Therefore it shall be that what thing whatsoever shall you hear out of the king's house, that thou shalt tell it to Zadok and Abiathar the priest. So David's setting up a spy network. Gotta have your information is power. Behold, they have there with them their two sons, Ahimaaz and Zadok's son, and Jonathan Abiathar's son. And by them ye shall send unto me everything that ye hear. So Hushai, David's friend, came into the city, and Absalom came into Jerusalem. And when David was little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled upon them, 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And the king said unto Ziba, What meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, The asses be for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink. And the king said, And where is thy master's son? And Ziba said unto king, Behold, he abideth at Jerusalem. For he said, Today shall be the house of Israel restored me the kingdom of my father. Then said the king to Ziba, Behold, thine are all that pertain unto Mephibosheth. And Ziba said, I humbly beseech thee that I may find grace in the sight, my lord, O king. And the king said unto Bahurim, Behold, thence came out a man of the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. He came forth and cursed, still as he came. And he came and cast stones at David. Now these people were the house of Saul. You had one that was, I think he was Saul's great grandson. Now, bore gifts. Mephibosheth, I taught him. He was a cripple in Saul's house, and one of his sons that was crippled, or his descendants that was crippled. And this one here hates David, and he's throwing stones. And now David's already down, and now he's got this demon-possessed descendant of Saul, reminding him of his sin, throwing stones at him. And he cast stones at David. This is all part of the cave of Adullum experience, bro. He's on his way to the cave, and he cast stones at David. And all the people, and the servants King David, and all the people, and all the mighty men were on the right hand and on his left. And thus said Shimei, when he cursed, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned. And the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son, and behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. Then said Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, unto the king, why should this dead dog cuss my lord, the king? Let me go over, I pray thee, and take his head off. Now this guy had the right attitude. And the king said, what have I to do with you, ye sons of Zeruiah? So let him curse, because the Lord has said unto him, curse David. No, that's not true. And the Lord would not be with this guy cursing David. But when you're beat down and you're already down, why not let somebody like that pile on? Because you're already beating yourself up. Why not let somebody else help you out? So that's what David's at. I mean, when it rains, it pours. And he's at that state where woe is me, woe is me. And the king said, what shall I do to you? He said, okay, really. And David said to Abishai and to all his servants, behold, my son, which came forth out of my bowels, seeketh my life. How much more now may the Benjamite do to it? He said, I got bigger fish to fry than worried about this peasant throwing stones at me. I just lost the kingdom to my own son. How much, through treason, how much more may this Benjamite do to it? And let him alone, and let him curse, for the Lord hath bidden him. It may be that the Lord will look on my affliction, and that the Lord will requite me good for his cursing this day. And David and his men went by the way. Shimei went along on the hillside over against him, and cursed as he went. So he got to endure this cursing fool on his way to this cave of Adullum. As he went, and threw stones at him, and had rocks chucked at you too, and cast dust. And the king and all the people that were with him became weary, and refreshed themselves there. And Absalom and all the people and the men of Israel came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with them. And it came to pass, when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, was come unto Absalom, and to Hushai said unto Absalom, God save the king, God save the king. And Absalom said to Hushai, is this thy kindness to thy friend? Why wentest thou not with thy friend? And Hushai said unto Absalom, nay, but whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel choose, his will I be, and with him will I abide. And again, whom should I serve? Should I not serve in the presence of his son, as I have served in thy father's presence? So will I be in thy presence. Then said Absalom to Ahithophel, give counsel among you, what shall we do? And Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go in unto thy father's concubines. Go screw your father's mistresses, all 10 of them. Go into thy father's concubines, which ye have left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall, and Ahithophel said unto Absalom, go into thy father's concubines, which ye have left to keep the house, and all Israel shall hear that thou art abhorred of thy father. Then shall the hands of all that are with thee be strong. So they spread Absalom a tent up on the top of the house. And Absalom went in into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. I mean, he had an orgy right there on the rooftop. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired of the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. Moreover, Ahithophel said unto Absalom, let me now choose out 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue after David this night, and I will come upon him while he is weary and weak-handed, and will make him afraid, and all the people that are with him shall flee, and I will smite the king on him, and I will bring back all the people unto thee, and the man whom thou seekest is as if